Hello everyone and welcome to the pond. My name is Frank, aka Bullfrog TCG, and this is going to be the second episode of this series where we talk about all the cards released so far in both Origins and Proving Grounds. And I am again joined today by the lovely Viggs. I actually don't know your real name, I just know your Discord name, so you can introduce yourself if you want to.
Sure, my name's Kyle.
Oh, Kyle, okay.
Vigorito.
Oh, nice, okay. So we are today kicking off the show with looking at the calm cards, so the green ones. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get right on it with Charm. So 1 energy, 1 power, Charm, move an enemy unit. This card is... I've heard a lot of people talk about it, like they kind of feel like this card should have been RV's signature spell, because this card is insanely strong. It basically reads just remove a unit for 1 energy, especially in Ari, because Ari also gets to trigger her both the legend ability and also the Ari champion ability to give stuff minus. So this card is just incredible, but it could also be used to just move stuff out of the way if you want to attack into a battlefield that has like too many units on it. So this is just, it's such a flexible card, and I think this is arguably one of the best cards in COM in general.
Yeah, I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I think this is one of the best COM cards that is printed currently. 1 power and 1 energy is a pretty low cost for what it does. It is essentially a kill spell. It is a spell that lets you move, like you said, move things out of the way. You can move things from battlefield to battlefield. You can move things off of battlefields. You can do some tricky things where you give the enemy a point, but pulls them out of the base so that they can't attack one of your other battlefields that you really want to defend. It's just super versatile.
Yeah, and I think this has to be a 9 for me. This is such a good card.
Yeah, that's I was thinking a 9 as well. Yeah.
9? Oh yeah, sick. Yeah. Oh yeah. In the last video, if you've seen that, we kind of gave like 95% of the cards as 7s. Apparently this takes a bit of training, but today I am gonna try to think a bit through more before I give cards ratings, and kind of try to use 1 through 6 a bit more. Maybe not 1, but at least like 5 or 6. But okay, moving on to Clockwork Keeper. 2 energy, 2 might. As you play me, you may pay 1 power as an additional cost, and if you do, draw 1.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite 2-drops in COM. It comes in on rate, just 2 for 2. But you can, the card draw is always useful. Being able to pay power, it's still, hefty cost, but it lets you cycle, for a card. And the thing that I really like about this is that it's not totally useless later in the game. Being able to draw a card off the top is incredibly useful later in the game. So being able to, if you top deck this, kind of cycle it for 2 and a power, just to draw something else while also getting a little bit of might on board. So I do like this a lot. In terms of combat stats, not great, but you probably don't want to use the draw effect earlier in the game, like on your first turn, just because you don't really want to set yourself back too much. But if you really need to, you can. I think this is a decently solid card.
Yeah, I think this card is great, just because they could so easily have just given this the power cost and then just made the effect mandatory, but the fact that you get to choose whether you want to pay the extra power is such a good way of designing the card, because as you said, it's like, because usually you don't really want to draw your 2 drops and your like early drops late game, but this kind of recycles itself if you do, because it's so cheap to begin with, and then you just pay an extra power and then you kind of draw a new card. I think this card is great, but the fact that you get to choose, like if you want to play it out early, you could just play 2 for 2, which is, it's on rate in that way, and then also if you want to, you can draw the card. So the flexibility of it is really what makes this card as good as it is, I think.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to give this, I know we talk about 7s, but I think I'm going to give it a 7. I think it is a very good card, but I also don't think it's like, nothing game breaking or nothing like game warping, I should say.
No, I agree, and I think, like, as far as the green cards go, I think there are still like times you don't necessarily play this one, where you kind of have other early drops that are better. I think 7 is a good number for this one. Moving on to Defy. 1 energy, 1 power, reaction, counter a spell that costs no more than 4 and no more than 1 power. This card kind of plays a unique role in the game. There's not really a card like it as of now. So for now, I think like, I mean, just because of that, I mean, it is an amazing card in general because you just get to counter so many early spells. And I mean, the fact that it counters up to 4, because a lot of like the spells you want to counter, like the Void Seekers, are like 4 cost. And I mean, a lot of the others are below that, so like challenges and the Void Seeker, of course, and like Hextech Race and all the stuff you might want to counter are usually below that. So yeah, I think this card is incredible for the color. I mean, I don't really see a green deck not running this unless we like move away from spells entirely in the meta. So yeah, I think this card is great.
Yep, this is, I think, one of the, I mean, this is like one of the defining cards of Calm, right? It's the cheapest counter spell. Like you said, it hits most early game spells, right? Up to 4 is pretty crazy. So it hits Primal Rage, it hits like all these other large 4-cost spells.
As well, yeah, true.
Yeah, where it like essentially like takes up in the early game, that's an entire turn, right? So being able to pay 1 mana to essentially negate your opponent's entire turn if they're casting a spell is pretty substantial. Also, in Riftbound, when you counter spell with Defy or Windwall, the card that is countered doesn't actually count as being played, which is really relevant when it comes to cards like Legion and Darius and things like that. And some of the other on-play like play card effects. So that's also a pretty big strength there. Yeah, I think this is amazing.
Yeah. And also like the Ravenbloom students as well don't grow because of that. So yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this also has to be a 9 for me.
Yep, I would say this is a 9 as well.
Yep. All right. Moving on to On Guard, 1 energy, reaction, give a friendly unit +1 might this turn, then an additional +1 might this turn if it is the only unit you control there.
Yeah, so On Guard, I mean, it's a good card. It's not my favorite card. I actually don't like In Guard as much as other people, but it's, you know, I can't deny that it is strong, especially in the meta right now. 1 energy, and that's it, is incredibly strong. Just being able to cast something for 1 energy, and reaction speed, amazing. And essentially, most of the time, you're going to be casting this for the +2. So it is essentially it just reads a +2 for 1 energy, which is a good counterspell. I'm sorry, a good combat trick. It is something that when you're playing against a deck that is in the calm colors, you have to, if they have 1 energy up, you have to always kind of play around it, which is an incredibly strong thing. Obviously, you could play this for the +1, but generally you're going to only use this in the scenarios where you have something alone on the board. Yeah, it's just a strong spell, yeah, just all around.
Yeah, I think this is. I think I might appreciate this card a bit more than you do, but I mean, it is especially good in Master Yi, because there you kind of tend to have 1 unit on each battlefield. But the thing that's also good about this is that it can be used as a reaction to the removal spells. So like the Hextech Race and the Void Seekers, you can kind of get above the spell. So this, together with Discipline, kind of has that, because like a lot of the other buff spells, like the Primal Strength, for example, are action speed, so you can actually like react to a removal spell with them. So that kind of makes them a bit weaker in that sense. But I mean, of course, it's not as good when you only give something +1 might, but that also could come in handy if you kind of try to take care of a 4 might unit with a Void Seeker, for example, to deal 4 damage. You kind of get above that. So it is a very cheap trick and kind of cheap way to save units in that way, and in Master E it just gets even better because then you usually always get the +2. So yeah, I think this is great, but I don't think you don't really run it in all the calm decks, just because if you like swarm the board a bit, then you kind of want to play something that does a bit more than just give +1. So yeah.
Yep. So my rating, it's going to be lower, mainly based on personal preference. I'm going to give this a 7 or 8, but I clearly recognize that this card is good. It's just that my personal preference is, you know, I prefer to use my deck slots for other things.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my god. Wow. I thought you were going to give it like a 5. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Well,
it's clearly very good.
No. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, in that case we agree then, because I think I'm gonna give this a. It's not as good as Charm and Defy, so I think I'm gonna give this a 7 as well. But it is kind of part of like especially Master Yi, kind of the green support package, I would say. Just a bit more niche than the other ones. But okay, moving on to Find Your Center. 3 energy, action. If an opponent's score is within 3 points of the victory score, this costs 2 less, and then the effect is draw 1 and channel 1 rune exhausted. So yeah, I think this card is very good. It is an action, so you can also do it on your opponent's turn. So you can kind of, if they are on, for example, if they're on 4 points and then conquer 1 battlefield, you can kind of react to the second conquer with this, so they cost 1 less. So you can kind of maximize the value that way. It is a bit worse to play it, to hardcast it for 3 energy. It's a bit expensive because just 3 energy, draw 1 and channel 1 rune is not that good. So yeah, I mean, this is not really a card I've played around with that much, so I don't really know how it feels like to play, but it reads pretty good to me, at least.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best ramp spell in the game currently. Being able to replace itself is such a huge benefit, right? You get to channel rune and draw a card. So you don't actually end up going down on any card resources. The effect of making it cheaper when your opponent's about to win, I feel like it's just a nice bonus. That's nice being able to cast it for 1. And I didn't realize it was action speed until right now. So that's just another good thing about it. Being able to hold up energy, and on your enemy's turn, and being able to utilize this if you just say you were keeping up a combat trick and you didn't need to use it, then you can do this instead. It's great. I think that I think it's one of the primary cards that are really kind of letting the green ramp decks, the calm ramp decks, really see some success is this card here.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, as I said, I haven't played enough with this card to kind of have a valid opinion in that way. But I think I'm gonna give this a 7 as well.
I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it's a pretty good card. I could see that going down in the future if there are better options, but this is like the ramp card for Con.
Okay, yep. Okay, we're looking at Meditation. 2 energy, reaction. As an additional cost to play this, you may exhaust a friendly unit. If you do, draw 2. Otherwise, draw 1.
I actually like this card, I think, more than most other people. It's not super suited for the meta, I think, right now, just because of deck space limitations and kind of just the general tempo of the game, because it's kind of like a tempo negative card. But reaction speed is great. Being able to just kind of toss it out on your enemy's turn is always a good thing to have. And being able to just draw 2, generally you're always going to want to cast this when you are exhausting a unit. Usually you can do that if you have something sitting on a battlefield for a turn, or in your base as well. But generally the situations will arise where you have held a battlefield and then you didn't move it, which is typical for the comms general strategy. And yeah, just being able to draw cards is always nice to see. I think the real limitation here is like I said, the tempo. It's like having to exhaust something. It means that you have to have something to exhaust. So generally, only certain circumstances are that using that exhaust to draw rather than to attack a battlefield or to retreat from a battlefield, and also the deck building cost of the opportunity cost of putting a different card that's going to impact the board a bit more. But yeah, I think I like this card more than most people, I think.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. And I think the real kicker with this card is the reaction, because you can kind of save it, and then if your opponent tries to remove something from anywhere, you can just, okay, well then I'm just gonna rest it and then draw 2, because I'm not gonna be able to use it anyways. So yeah, I think this card is great. It does of course get better in decks like Master Yi and Ari, because they are kind of the defenders of the game. They are really good at defending battlefields, so then you're usually gonna have, or holding battlefields, so then you're usually gonna have something to use this effect on. And I mean, if you draw it late game, it also just replaces itself for 2 energy, so kind of like the Clockwork Keeper in that way. And then if you have something to rest, it just draws you 2 cards. So yeah, I think I like this card a lot, but the reaction speed, I feel, is like the real power of this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a 6 for this one. I think it's a good card, but I think the current the current environment is a bit more tempo centric, unless you're talking about the Aurora decks. But yeah, I just feel like it's in a weird place right now. But I do like this card a lot.
Yeah, I think I am gonna give it a 7 actually. Just because I mean, in the cards in the decks that can play this also have the best protection spells in the game, with between like Zani's Hourglass and like the Defies and all the reaction pump spells. So I think the fact that this is printed in green, kind of it has the whole protection system already built up around it, so it is a bit easier to get off just because of that. But of course, it does suffer because of there's so much removal in the meta right now. But I think I'm still gonna give this a 7 because I think this is actually a really good card.
Nice.
All right, Playful Phantom, 5 energy, 5 might, and that's it. Yeah, this is one of the this is one of the few vanilla spells in the game. I mean, I always try to kind of see the cards to kind of see the potential in every card. But I mean, the problem with this is that it is a vanilla, and there are some other vanillas that are above rate. So this is a 5 for 5, but there are also some vanillas that are like 7 for 6, for example. So the only thing this card has writing on it is whether or not Spirit or Shadow Isles, the kind of tags it has on it, if that becomes relevant. In that case, it might be playable. But for now, you're never gonna play this over anything else, because you usually don't want to play out a vanilla. I mean, if you do want to play out on a vanilla, it's usually one of your early drops, not one that costs 5, because 5 is quite a big investment for no effect. So yeah, I don't think this card is very good, but I mean, it's kind of obvious as well.
Yeah, exactly. What you said about the tags is really like the key point there. It's like maybe in the future, Spirit will be and Shadow Isles will be like a relevant tag, but currently this is like not very good for the amount of energy that you're spending. It doesn't cost power, which is good, but even
yeah,
then.
well, I mean, if this costs power, that would be quite insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything is gonna get a 1, I think it has to be this one. So yeah, I'm just gonna give this a 1.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a 2 just because of the potential of the tags, but
yeah,
I'm okay with a 1 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the art. I think the art is sick. But yeah, I mean, as far as cards you don't want to play in the deck, I think this is pretty high up there.
Yeah, if I recall, this art was also used for a Legends of Runeterra card that was particularly good. I think it was like a pinging effect when things died, if I remember correctly. It's been a very long time.
Yeah,
but it is.
We can. Yeah,
it's kind of sad to see the
how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Rune Prison, 2 energy, 1 power, action, stun unit.
So possibly or probably the best stun card in the game. I'd argue to say probably one of the only relevant stun cards besides the Leona unit. I think that 2 energy is a good, great cheap cost. 1 power, a little bit expensive. But being able to stun a unit as a combat track is pretty impactful, especially against these, ramp and Aurora decks where they have these large units that you can kind of remove from the equation during combat math. Better on defense than offense, just the way the stunning rules work. You'll get bounced back if you don't overcome the might in the battlefield. But this is a very strong defensive card. Action, obviously, it's what makes it particularly good, is being able to use it in a combat. I think like this is probably the best stun card, but I'm also not like super high on it, just because it's like you have the situations that you want to use it is like almost like on defense when they have a high might unit. So like you could use it on a lower cost unit, but you might as well just use like one of your other combat tricks in green. So in terms of like how the amount of like spots it's useful, or particularly useful more so than other cards, I think that this is probably, it's not like you don't want to slap it in every deck, but I think it's pretty good as like a 1 over 2 of in some com decks, and especially if you're playing Leona, then I can see maybe running the full suite of 3, but even then.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with stun cards like this is that they don't do anything if you have an empty board. They kind of have to have cards to work around them, and they're very situational that way. Situational. Wow, let's just swallow that word. But yeah, so I think for now you don't really want to play stun cards in general outside of like Leona, because Leona also gets a payoff for just stunning. But yeah, as you said, it is way better on defense than on offense, because on defense you can just it just makes combat math so comfortable for the one that's defending. And I mean, I've seen some people play the Leona champion outside of Leona, but I mean that is attached to a unit as well, which also has shield, so it's a bit different. But yeah, for the stun spells, I think, as you said, I think this is, I mean, it is probably the best one outside of the Leona signature spell, maybe. But yeah, the fact that you have to have such a kind of machinery working around this to actually make it feel impactful, it's pretty bad for a card like this. But in the stun decks, I think this card is incredible, and I mean, I definitely run through this in the Leona deck for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with a 7 for this one. It's a good card. It's not my favorite card, but I think it's a good card.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would also have. I mean, I am the 7 man, so I think I would also have given this a 7. But the fact that it's only really playable in Leona, I think I'm gonna go down to a 6 for this one. All right, Solari Shieldbearer, 3 energy, 2 might. When you play me, stun a unit. I think this card is in a very weird spot. Because this is kind of like the Rune Prison. You kind of have to have other cards out, because just stunning something doesn't really do anything, unless you're in Leona, in which case you'd get a buff. But I mean, it's not really a good payoff for just stunning something. If this had like accelerate or a way to make it come in ready, this would be so much better. But the fact that you kind of have to have something out that you have an attack with to kind of get the full value out of this, because then you can stun and then you can like attack into it or something. This would have been much better, but the fact that you can't, and the fact that it's only on your turn, I think this card is, I think on the first impression this seems like a really good effect, but when you actually play with it, it's really hard to get value out of it. You never really want to play it out unless you have an established board already. So for that reason, I'm not really a fan of this one.
Yeah, I feel similarly about this. It's definitely better in Leona, where it becomes like on rate 3 for 3, and then you get to stun something. I could see it also being maybe useful in like a Leona baited hook style deck, where you are sacking something and you're always able to kind of pull this out. It's low cost, and get a stun on something. But even then, I don't think it's particularly great, just because the stun synergies aren't really there in this first set. If in the future, like, there's a lot more stun support cards, I think that like having this kind of effect on a like three drop with no power, I think is fine. But like you said, you had to play it on your own turn, and stunning isn't as effective when you are on attack, because you still have to beat the might of whatever's on in the battlefield. So it can save you like units and in the trades, but also you still have to have like you said, an established board to take advantage of it. So I think this card's okay, but could be more useful in the future. But currently, I think it's kind of middling.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, Hook Leona is probably the sexiest thing I've ever heard in my life. So that is definitely something that has to be tried out. I haven't even thought of that yet. But yeah, I think we kind of agree on that one. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give this. I think I'm gonna give it a 4 actually, just because there's not really enough stun synergy to make this card feel worth it.
I'm probably going to give it a 5. I think it does have its uses, and I think that having like a stun effect from hand for relatively cheap, that isn't, if you're already playing 3 Rune Prison, can be useful. But yeah, even then, I think it's just an okay card right now.
Yeah. All right, we are looking at Stalwart Poro, 2 energy, 2 might, shield.
I think this is probably the best Com 2 drop in the game. It is, 2 for 2 is like the standard rate, and just being able to defend for 3 is awesome, and especially in Master Yi, where you get the +2 automatically. This is a 2-drop 5 might unit on defense, which is pretty crazy, because generally to get over that 5 might hump, you have to spend some resources, or have a larger unit, which is at least like turn 2, 3 depending on whether you are first or second. So like, and that's like with no resources devoted from the Yi player. Um, I think this card is also just generally strong and not Yi, and just 3 for 2 on defense is amazing. Um, so yeah, I think this is just a very solid card. It has Poros energies, which is not really relevant right now. There are some, but in the future, I'm sure everyone loves Poros, so I'm sure there'll be many more Poro related cards to come.
Yeah, when the Braum legend gets introduced, this is definitely gonna get more play. But I mean, it already is, and as you said, this is probably the best green 2-drop. The fact that it trades into your opponent's like early drops, because I mean, most turn 1 plays are either like 1s or 2s, and the fact that this trades into that, and then it also trades up on the defense is just incredible. So this is kind of the card you want to lead off with. I mean, especially Master Yi, as I said, just kind of develop a 2 might or 2 energy 5 might unit on turn 1 is just exactly where you want to be in that deck. So yeah, I think this card is incredible. And as you say, as we get more Poro support, this card is just going to get better.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this card an 8. Very solid card.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree. 8 for this one. Alright, Stand United. 3 energy, hidden, action. Buff a friendly unit. Buffs give an additional +1 might to friendly units this turn. I think this card is a pretty tricky one, because to get the full effect of this, you kind of have to have a full board full of units, and that are also buffed, so it kind of requires a lot of setup to get the full value out of it. And for 3 energy, that's pretty expensive. I mean, it does get a bit easier when you have the hidden, for sure. And I mean, if you can combine this with cards like the Wizened Elder, that kind of jumps from a 4 to a 7 with this one. That's pretty good. But I think this card, especially in this meta when there is so much removal out there, and I think this card is just a bit slow and it doesn't do enough, and it's a bit expensive. So I haven't really found, if this buffed on reaction speed, like from the hand, I think this card would be way better, because then it can kind of protect stuff off the battlefield as well. But the fact that this has to be hidden for it to get reaction makes it a bit worse, because then you can't react to the same way to like removal spells outside of that battlefield. So yeah, I don't think this card is very strong, but I mean it has some uses, and if you can get the full effect of it, then I mean it is a powerful effect in some scenarios, but I think it's just a bit hard to pull off.
Yeah, let's see. I do like this card a lot. I think that at its floor, it is essentially a 3 energy for a +2, which is below rate. But it does have the hidden. Lets you kind of, be a little bit tricky with like what your hidden cards are. Typically, the general hidden cards that are played in Com are Sonya's Hourglass. So being able to have this as an alternate face down hidden card could cause your opponent to kind of, 1, have to factor it in, and 2, like misplay into it. I think the real place it shines is in Lee Sin decks, where you're able to stack a bunch of buffs on the Lee Sin. So now each of those buffs is +2. So you can take a Lee Sin that has 3 buffs on it, rather than being a 5 + 3, which is an 8. It'll get the +1, so it'll be 5 + 4 + 4. So it ends up like jumping immediately in how strong it is, and that can completely blow out your opponent. So I think it's particularly strong in Lee Sin, not so strong, but in other Com decks, or decks that, at least decks that aren't running the Lee Sin champion. I think that it is okay in those other decks, and I think that it could be a good one of to kind of have that bit of surprise factor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hadn't actually thought about the synergy with Lee Sin. That is actually incredible. If you can get like 5 buffs on Lee Sin, and then this just becomes like a +6 or 7. Yeah, that is obviously very good. But okay, I think, like outside of Lee Sin, I just don't see this being played that much. So I think I am gonna give this I think I'm gonna give it a 6.
Yeah, I'll probably give it a 6 as well. I think that sounds about right.
Yep.
Lee Sin, it's obviously a bit better, but also Lee Sin as a deck is, hasn't found its great footing just yet. I think there is potential for it to be a pretty good deck in the meta, but I think we just haven't exactly cracked it just yet.
Yeah, and I think also that deck just lacks a bit more like buff synergy, I think. But yeah. Okay, moving on to Sunlit Guardian. 3 energy, 3 might, shield, and tank.
Yeah, I think this is a decent card. You know, it's 3 for 3 on rate, and then 4 on defense, and tank is also good. I think the real, because it is a 3 drop, it does fill that awkward spot, right? Where this is good if you're going second, but if you're going first, you know, it's generally you'll want to try to play a 4 drop if you can, or you can play this, and if you're holding up one energy in calm especially can represent a few different things, so that's also pretty decent. It still dies to falling star, which sucks, but if you have that one energy in guard, maybe you could save it, but if they don't target this twice. But yeah, it does feel a little slow. I do think it's got like good stats, so it's just the deck building cost of like you're putting this in over some other card from Com at minimum, and Com has a lot of really good cards. So I think that because of that, it's only like kind of slightly above average, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really that high on this card either. I think it is. I think I like this card the most in Ari, because then you kind of get more, because you kind of want to usually build a pretty big board on Ari or kind of stack up one battlefield. So this gives nice numbers there, and it also has the tank, which can come in handy to kind of protect your more important pieces. But I think in that case as well, you kind of have to debate, okay, do I want to play this or do I want to play the Ari on 3 runes? And then as I said, after that, you might want to like spend your full energy to do something else. So I think it is a bit awkward to find the place you want to play this. So the timing of it is a bit weird, I think. But I mean, if you have it on the battlefield, it feels really good. But yeah, it is a bit slow.
I think I'm going to give this a 6.
Yeah, I can get behind a 6. That sounds good. Alright, Wielder of Water. 3 energy, 2 might. While I'm attacking or defending alone, I have +2 might. I think this card obviously really shines in Master Yi, because then it's just a 3 energy, 6 might unit on defense. But this also has the kind of same issue as the Sunlit Guardian, is that it is a bit slow when you play it out. If this was a 2 drop, this card would be incredible, but I mean, in that case it probably would have been a bit too good. Yeah, it is a bit slow when you play it out, but it is a good unit to have out, but you don't really want to play it outside of Master Yi, because in other decks you kind of want to build more onto one battlefield, and this only does stuff when it's alone. So yeah, I think it also dies to anything, because it only gets the buff while it's in combat. So yeah, I think this is a pretty cool card, and the art is amazing. I just think it's a bit too slow for what it does.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like, if you're playing it in Yi, you do get the +6. This is great. 3 for 4 is also above rate, but like you said, it does die to pretty much anything. I think like most spells will do at least 2 damage. So
Yeah.
So all your opponent needs to do is just not fight it in combat and just play any kind of removal spell, and it should go the way of the buffalo. So I think for that reason, it's only an okay card. Again, maybe average, slightly above average card, playable, but not amazing.
Yeah, I think this. I mean, for me, this has to be like a 5.5. I think. I think it could go up to a 6 for this one. But yeah, not more than that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. 5 or 6, like somewhere in between. It's pretty much on par with the previous card.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Adaptatron. 4 energy, 3 might. When I conquer, you may kill a gear, and if you do, buff me.
Now this is a fun card. It is one of the only, or if not the only, gear removal in green and in calm. It doesn't cost power, which is always a plus. It is a mech, so future mech synergies could be particularly useful. I think that the conquer effect is nice. It does mean it needs to live through the conquer, which might be a little hard, depending on the matchup, but green and calm does have a lot of combat tricks and buffs to kind of keep it alive. And then you get to kill a gear, which is good. Right now, the main gears you'll probably want to take care of are like opposing Zanya's hourglasses, Aurora's, obviously. Um, there are a few other relevant gears, but not something you'll see super often. And then the buff is just a nice little extra thing on top. I also don't. I think it is like a bit slow. You're spending your entire second turn generally to play this down, or if you're going to play it down, you have to at least wait a turn before you can even try to use the effect. But I do think the effect is a decently strong one. Um, I think this card will grow in power depending like when there are like strong gears that are particularly impactful to the game. So it is like a +1 essentially, just being able to kill something for nothing. But right now, I don't think it's particularly amazing, but I definitely see a future where this might be like a good card to include. That's right now. You can throw it in your side deck, but yeah, depending on the matchup. But yeah, I think it's kind of a weird card in a weird spot right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is. I mean, I basically agree with everything. I saw one interesting deck list that was running this in Yasuo, and he played like the discard package with like the scrap heap and stuff. Because the thing about this one is you could also kill your own gear. So you could play out the scrap heap, draw one, and then attack with this and kill the scrap heap and draw another one. So that was kind of sweet. So you kind of have some uses there. You can play kind of build your deck to make this card a bit more efficient. No, to make this card a bit more like efficient. But yeah, I think the main drawback is that it is so slow, and if you play it out later, then your opponent kind of is like, okay, well I'm not gonna play the Aurora, then I'm just gonna get rid of this first and then play that one. So unless you can play it in some like red-green deck, which we currently don't have to make this enter ready, or something like that, then yeah, this card is not. It's and it is like when you play it out, it is just a 3/4, which is, I mean, it dies to all removal, and it could also die to like the Hextech Rays and those kinds of removals in the combat step as well. So yeah, I think this is a bit too, at least for now, I think it's a bit too slow for what it does. But as you said, it is like green's, I believe, only way to remove gear. So for that reason, it's also going to be playable in that sense. But yeah, usually you have better options as well if that's the effect you're going for.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this a 5 or a 6. I like the card, and I do see a future where this could be pretty decent. But right now, it's just not really worth the deck space in my opinion. I do like the combo with the scrap heap. That's pretty interesting. I'll try that out sometime.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 5 as well. Alright, moving on to block. 2 energy, hidden action, give a unit shield 3, and tank this turn. I think this card is good in the right deck and in the right situations. The main drawback of this is that it only does something on defense. You can't use this card aggressively. You can't use it in reaction to like removal spells. So if this is the card you've hidden, and they try to remove the unit, this doesn't do anything unless they remove it by combat. But if you can get this effect off, like in Ari for example, this card is amazing because it gives something tank, which means it's gonna just soak up all the damage, so then it can protect your more important stuff. So the effect is good, but I think it's just a bit too situational, I think, a lot of times. But if you can get this off, then yeah, it's a very good ability, or a very good effect, I mean.
Yeah, I actually really like this card. And I didn't initially, but after playing against a bunch of com decks, and I feel like this is a card that people tend, at least right now, not to play around. Generally, when they see a face down card in com, they think, okay, that's most likely a Zanya's Hourglass. And being able to kind of reveal this for +3 and tank is, I think, pretty strong. It, like you said, allows you to protect your key units on a battlefield, if not completely just blowing out your opponent. It's only 2 mana, which is great, and you can use it. So you could just keep up 2 energy and then just play it from hand during a combat as a combat trick on defense. Like you said, it is only useful or only usable on defense. But generally in com, like that's where you want to be anyway, right? If you aren't kind of defending like Com already has some difficulty attacking. So I feel like you've also got some bigger problems if you are not already defending at least a battlefield for some points. Um, and also I think this is also like combos with like Charm and other things with like Blitzcranks and other pull effects. So you could technically use it aggressively if you are like pulling an enemy unit. Um, but yeah, I think this is actually a pretty decent card that I wouldn't be surprised if people start like running a bit more of.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this. I think this is a very 7 card for me.
Yeah, I think this is probably a 7 as well for me. Yeah, I didn't expect you to go that high with it.
Oh really? No, no. I mean, I like it, but just yeah, the drawback of not doing anything outside of specifically defending in combat just makes it a bit weaker in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, if you get the effect of then +3 and tank for 2 energy, and the fact that it doesn't cost a power as well, it's very fair for what it does. It kind of knows that okay, I don't do anything in a lot of situations, but when I do something, I'm really good. So you kind of don't get punished for running this because you don't have to recycle the power for it. But okay. Moving on to Discipline. 2 energy, reaction, give a unit +2 might this turn, and then draw 1. Yeah, this is probably one of the best reactions in the game. Give something +2 for 2, no power recycle, so it's very cheap, it's very efficient, and it also replaces itself. And I mean, this combined with the one of the battlefields that draws you a card when you target something, this just draws you 2 cards. So there it's even better. Yeah, I think this is one of the best buff spells in the game. Yeah, I don't really see a calm deck not running this. So yeah, this is just incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is hands down one of the best combat tricks in the game. It +2 for 2 is on rate, or I guess there's like unless they're counting on guard's stipulation of being alone. The fact that it is it lets you replace itself is, I think, the real key here. Is that there's no like there's no like cost to playing it. You just kind of even when it feels like as an opponent to the com deck, it's like you kind of want to pull these out of like your opponent's hand, but even when you do, it's like, okay, well, now the only benefit I got was being like they have 1 less discipline in their deck because they didn't actually lose anything, and I had probably had to spend a resource to get them to utilize it. It's also like something you always have to play around. If they have 2 energy up, you always have to assume that they, at minimum, they can go +2 or they can go +4, right? So it's like a wide range, and it's like, well, do I only play around the +2 or do I play around them having double and guard? It depends on the state of the game, obviously, or +3, because of I guess block in this case. So it's like there's just so many things you have to consider around playing around, and Discipline is just like the cantrip is just amazing. It's like you play it and then immediately have something to replace, and then you also probably killed something on your opponent's board. So it's really lets you grind out your opponent.
Yeah, this is a 9 for me as well.
Yep, I think it is a 9 as well.
Yeah. Alright, moving on to Eclipse Herald. 7 energy, 1 power, 7 might. When you stun an enemy unit, ready me and give me +1 might this turn.
This is a weird card. It's definitely a fun card. Getting some payoff is one of the few cards that you get a payoff for stunning an enemy unit. I don't know how great it is currently. Readying is nice, but at that point, like, yeah, the game is kind of like at a boiling point, right? So it's like being able to, if this lives, you either have to play this and then immediately stun the same turn, which is a lot of energy, or play it, use it, and then stun, and then maybe try to gank over or retreat it and try to stun again. It's like it requires a lot of resources and setup to use. Right now, I don't think there are any particular like bird or Mount Targon synergies, so I think right now this card's only okay when you could also just play like one of the other big green cards, like the dragon. So I think this card's only okay right now.
Yeah, I actually love this card. I think this card is so sick to play. I mean, in Leona, outside of Leona, you'd never see this. But the fact that you can play it out and then swing with Leona and get this like 8, potentially 9 might attacker in, because you can buff this as well with the Leona ability, just makes this. I think this card is so fun, and it's so because you can use it with all of the stun spells. You kind of because the fact that it gets +1 might from its own ability and also the buff from the Leona is so good. So I really like this as kind of a surprise card because no one expects it either. They never expect you to play this, and the fact that you could all of a sudden have 2 attackers, one like 4 might unit. I mean, if the Leona is buffed, then 5 might unit, and then this coming in as well from the hand is just. I think that's really good. So I actually like this card a lot. But I mean, I do only like it in Leona, but in Leona I love this.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 6.
Yeah, I have to give this a 7. I mean, in Leona this card feels so sick to play. But I mean, you can't really play it outside of that, so yeah, I can't go higher than that. So yeah, it's gonna be a 7 for me. Alright, Mask of Foresight. 2 energy. When a friendly unit attacks or defends alone, give it +1 might this turn, and this is a gear. I think this effect is really good. You kind of do take a turn off to play this, and it doesn't do anything by itself. So it kind of sits in some part like the same spot of like the Iron Ballista. But I think that where this card really shines is in Yasuo or Master Yi, because in Master Yi you just get more defense and you also get a bit of a bump on your offense as well, which is kind of where Master Yi lacks some power. And in Yasuo you can kind of use this in combination with the Yasuo Legend to deal even more. No, the champion I mean, to deal even more damage when you attack something. But it is, of course, it does have to be alone. So outside of those 2 decks, I don't really see this card played. But I think it is a very good ability, and it is cheap for what it does. But you don't really want to see this on turn 1. But playing this on turn 2 might be a good idea, because then you can kind of play your 2 might unit and then get a buff to swing into whatever your opponent played. Yeah, I think the effect is good, but it is a bit slow as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a good effect. You can actually use it multiple times in the same turn if you are moving and ready, which I think is pretty useful, so that you have the buff stacks. But yeah, I think it's a good card, and pending some future gear synergies, it could have some pretty interesting implications. Yeah, I'd probably give it a 6 or 7 right now.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a 6. It's one of those cards where it's like, it's really nice to have one of them, and I mean it's really nice to have more of them as well, but you don't really want to top like this, because that is just a brick at that point. So yeah. Alright, Poro Herder. 3 energy, 1 power, 3 might. When you play me, if you control a Poro, buff me and draw 1.
I like this card. However, in practice, I feel like the 1 power is not... it kind of hurts because like if you don't have a Poro, it's just a 3 and 1 power for 3, which is terrible. But if you do have a Poro, it becomes a 4 and lets get the draw. So like the disparity between having a Poro and not having a Poro is pretty substantial. Being able to replace itself is nice. So I think that right now, like, it's best used in Leona, where you have access to the 6 Poros, 3 yellow, 3 green. I can see this being particularly good in the future if we have more Poros besides just the 2 drops. But right now, it's just okay in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cards that kind of gives me hope for the future. It's kind of like, it's weird that it has a power now, but I feel that is also one way of balancing it for whatever Poro synergies we might get. Because if this gets too consistent, it might have been like a bit too good without the power cost. But yeah, like for now you don't really play this because you don't have enough Poros. Like at the max you could have 6 Poros in your deck, and then without anything, this is just, as you said, a 3 for 3 at a power, which is so bad. So yeah, I think this card is, I can't wait to make a deck built around this, but we don't have enough cards for that yet.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this a 5 or a 6 right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this a 5. We don't have the synergy for it, but I expect this to go up in the future. Alright, Reinforce. 5 energy. Look at the top 5 cards of your main deck. You may play a unit from among them. Its energy cost is reduced by 5, then recycle the remaining cards. I think this card has the potential to be really good, but for now, you don't really have the setup You don't really have the correct setup to play this around, I think. I mean, you do have a lot of cards with like vision, and you can play this in like a weird karma deck where you kind of give all of your units vision. But the thing is that to make this card really good, you kind of have to play it on like more than 5 energy, because in that case you're just paying 5 for a 5 energy unit. But if you can play this, in a deck where you kind of reliably find something that costs more than 5, then I think this becomes better. But I mean, it's such a weird card because you don't even get the discount. You only get to. It almost feels like a very expensive beta token in some way. I don't know. I think this card sits in a very, very weird spot right now, and you don't really want to play it, at least not for now.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the cost is reduced by 5, which is already what you're playing. So unless you're like cheating this card out, like it doesn't. If you're not actually getting anything, you're just like randomly choosing a card that's in your deck, the top 5. It could whiff. You could get nothing. To just reduce it by 5, which is already what you're paying, which it feels pointless unless there's some other combination with this card. You of course, like revealing cards, you could reveal Nocturne, which I don't think is a reason to play this card. I think it's like it's not like consistent enough to be impactful. Yeah, I think this card is pretty bad currently. This could be an interesting combo piece in the future, depending on future cards, but I think this is a pretty bad card right now.
Yeah, and I mean the only synergy we have currently is like you can play the blue Kaiser, for example, to play this a bit later on when you're a bit far into the game. But then you also have to get it into the graveyard or in the trash, and blue and green doesn't really do that very well outside of like playing it out. So yeah, I don't know. It is a bit of a weird card. So I think I'm just gonna give this. I think this is just a 2 or 3 now.
Yeah, I agree. 2 or 3. I could see that going up if there's some crazy combo with it. But like you said, blue Kaiser, maybe it sounds pretty good. Like getting a unit, but you still have to pay it, right? Like so, it's like you can just like reduce the cost by 5 energy. It's okay, but you could also choose something that's like way more impactful to the board, right? So, yeah. I think that it's not an amazing card.
Yeah. Alright, Spirit's Refuge, 2 energy, 1 power. When you play this, buff a friendly unit. And friendly buffed units have Deflect.
If they didn't already, that's the big key.
If they didn't already. True, yes, if they did not already.
I think this card is decent, I know that people have tried sideboarding this against Kaisa. I'm not sure how effective it is. But having Deflect on your units is definitely helpful for taxing Kaisa's economy. The one thing is like it doesn't double stack the deflects, which I think is like a pretty important piece of this puzzle. Like being like if it did, it'd be quite amazing. I think being able to now my enemy has to target my Kiana, like cycle 2 just to target my Kiana, right? But right now it only 1. It's still okay. I think it definitely can see use. But I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know how great this is. It really relies on having buff synergies where you're able to like consistently give buffs. Of course, it gives a buff itself, which is nice, but beyond that, giving +1 and a deflect, for 2, it's like not amazing. So you'd really want to be able to take advantage of this with other buff units. And I'm not sure if like I could maybe see this being useful in Lee Sin, where you're able to like regularly apply buffs. But yeah, in other decks, I'm not really sure how great this is.
Yeah, I agree. I think this card is pretty good in Lee Sin, because as you said, you do have a steady stream of buffs just coming from the legend ability, but it is purely a sideboard card. I don't really think you want to run this in the main deck unless you have a very specific meta where that is actually warranted. And the fact that it doesn't stack deflects means that just drawing one of this means that it's just the second one is just a 2 energy 1 power buff unit, which is very bad. So yeah, I think it's kind of a weird because it is kind of the same as like other stuff where you want 1, but you never want 2 or 3. So yeah, it is a bit of a weird one, but I mean it is a sideboard card, I think, so it's okay.
I'm going to give this a 5. It's definitely playable and good in the right circumstances, but nothing crazy or amazing.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 as well. Alright, Windwall. 3 energy, 2 power, reaction, counter a spell. Now this is, kind of like the Defy, this is the only card that does what this does. Just counters anything. Or it counters a spell. 3 energy and 2 power. The 2 power that's pretty expensive. So you rarely want to run this in the main deck unless, like kind of with the last card, it's a very specific meta. But this can be used to like counter stuff like the Time Warp, for example. It can be used to target all like the big spells. But I think also it's limited by that because it only targets spells. And for 3 energy and 2 power, I think, if this countered like abilities as well, this would be even better. But I think for now it's good because it's the only thing that does what this does. But I also don't really think you want to run this in the main deck usually, at least not for now.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I think that it's a good card by virtue of being able to just say no to one of your opponent's spells, but it is incredibly expensive. So you're only generally going to want to play this into spells that are more expensive, or at parity with the Windwall itself. So that kind of like limits its uses a little bit. You can cancel a particularly impactful like low cost spell, but again, that's a very niche scenario. I can see this being more useful now that decks are starting to run these larger spells like your unchecked powers, your time warps, things like that. So a good sideboard card if you are cognizant of that or knowledgeable that your opponent is running those cards. But yeah, it is a card that can just like sit in your hand. You're like waiting for the right time to use it, and it's like, well, I don't want to take a huge economy hit just so I can counter one of their like lower cost spells. It's kind of like a weird spot. I feel like you get most of what you want from just running Defy, but I could see this in the sideboard being useful.
Yeah, I agree. I think for that reason, I think I am going to give this a 6 just because it is unique in what it does. But yeah, no more than that.
Yeah, me too. 6 sounds good.
Alright, we're looking at Wizened Elder. 4 energy, 4 might. While I'm buffed, I have an additional +1.
Yeah, I like this card. It doesn't cost power, which is nice. So it's a good turn 2 play without having to sit back your rune economy. Though I only really see this useful in Lee Sin, or specifically decks that you are able to buff regularly. I can see it's also useful in Leona, but Lee Sin has ample buff effects in orange, and just through the hero legend, it becomes essentially a 6 might unit for 4, or in the case if I'll say you'll spend 1 extra for either using some kind of buff effect. So on average, like 5 for 6 is above rate. It's not amazing, but 6 is a pretty good break point in terms of combat. It also means that your opponent, once they want a falling start, they have to sink both hits into it, and they can be blown out by 1 combat trick. It's a 6 is a pretty decent spot to be in terms of like might values. But yeah, I think this is a decent card.
Yeah, I think in the beginning I didn't really like this because it just felt like it's just a stat stick, which it is. But then playing against it, this is annoying as shit to deal with for certain decks.
My leasing deck.
Oh yeah, I think it was you actually. This card is such a pain in the ass to deal with. But I think beyond that, I think this is just a big stat stick, and the fact that you kind of the buff has to come from somewhere. So that is usually gonna mean you have to pay 1 more. So it's a 5 or 6, which is, it's good, but it's also a bit expensive, I think. And you can also run this in decks where you can play the arena bar, so you kind of get that buff for free, but then you also have to pay 2 or 3 energy for the arena bar. I don't remember how much that costs. So I don't know. I think this card is okay. It's not great. It's good to have out, but it's also a bit slow to play out, I feel like.
Yep.
So yeah, I think this card is just okay.
Yep, I agree. I think this is probably a 6 for me. It's a decent curve filler for like a mid-rangey kind of buff deck, but you know, it's also not amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 5. Even though I got whooped by you playing this, I think this is still a 5 for me. All right, Ari Alluring, 5 energy, 1 power for 5 energy, 1 power for might. Ari Alluring. When I hold, you score 1 point.
I think that this card, being the chosen champion for Ari, I think has a lot of potential. I think now that Ari is starting to run the time warp combo, where you kind of just get an Ari on the board, and then you're able to like double score with the Ari ability. It's pretty good. I think that it's one of the few bonus point effects in the game, and it's like one that is like probably one of the easiest, or it is the easiest bonus point to score. You know, you don't have to do anything out of the ordinary, like moving a unit 3 times or conquering in a certain way. You just have it on the board, and you automatically get the point. And green and Com has a lot of ways to keep it safe. So I think obviously this becomes a target immediately because your enemy doesn't want you to score an extra point, and it does die to, you know, most base removal effects. So I think it's something to keep in mind. But slamming this down on the board at the right time, like where you already have a battlefield conquered, can be pretty impactful, and also helps enable the a time warp combo of just like being able to score from such a low point threshold for into the win. So I think this card is actually, you know, I know people were like high on it, now they were down on it, but now I'm starting to think that this card is actually a bit, with the right deck, can be pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the you do have some very powerful plays with this, with the time warp, because then you just get a million points. But it does sit in a weird spot because you kind of wanna, if you wanna play this out early, it's really bad rate because it's only a 4 for 5, so you kind of have to have a setup built around it already. For example, the blue Ari, but in that case you kind of have to either play that in the champion zone and play that out, and then draw this, or you have to draw the blue Ari first and then play that. So this kind of, unless you're going for like the final points, this requires a lot of setup to make it be alive, because as you said, when you play this out, this just becomes everything just homes to this, like the Void Seekers and everything. This has to die. Because it's just gonna run away with
tank.
It reads tank. Yes, it does. So yeah, so you kind of have to have, like, if you have like hourglasses or like some buff spells, in which case you need to be on more than 5 energy to kind of have that set up. But when you play it out at the right time and you have it with the time warp, this becomes of course incredible. But I think it does require a lot of setup, and I think that's why I'm maybe not as high on it as some other people might be.
Mm-hmm. I'll probably give this a 6 or a 7.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a 6 as well. It is one of the ways to score extra points, and under the right circumstances, this can just run away with the game. But yeah, I think 6 is a good one. All right, Blitzcrank, impassive, 5 energy, 1 power, 5 might, tank. When you play me to a battlefield, you may move an enemy unit to here. When I hold, return me to my owner's hand. I love this card. I think Blitzcrank is so sick. It's obviously very, way better in Ari, because then you also get, if you have the champion out, then you pull something in, then you give it -3. So this kind of becomes like a big removal spell, and the fact that it has tank as well is that your opponent can't really choose how they want to deal damage. They have to deal damage to this first. So I think I really like this card, but it is, the fact that you have to bounce it back to your hand, it's kind of a negative, but also you kind of get to use the ability again. It does require some setup and build around, because you have to play it on the battlefield to get the effect. You can't like move into a battlefield and then get the effect. You have to play it on there, so you have to have held the battlefield to do so, which is why I think this card is really good in Ari. It's not as good in Master Yi, because if you play this to a battlefield, then the Master Yi ability just doesn't trigger, because you already have something else there. But I think as far as like a removal spell, that also helps you to give you some extra oomph on the battlefield, so your opponent has struggles more to get rid of it. Yeah, I think this card is really good, but it is a bit expensive, and you kind of have to have the tools around it to make this worthwhile to kind of keep playing this out. But if you can, this card just feels so annoying for your opponent because you just keep pinging your opponent's stuff from anywhere. It could be from the base or it could be from the other battlefield. So yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, I feel similarly. It's I think this is a good card. It is pretty expensive. The tank is pretty useful, so it kind of stops like an aggressive push after you play it. Bouncing it to your hand, it's I think it's net neutral, right? It's like being able to use the effect again is super strong, but also you do have to keep paying to reuse it, and it is expensive. But you can also just like lock your opponent out with this. Like if you are ahead, you're able to just keep that lead because you're constantly taking any unit that they try to develop and killing it. And if they just don't have an answer, then like it can outright just like win you the game. But does feel like one of those cards that's like, it's way better when you are ahead than when you are behind. If you, it just like won't help you break a board or break onto a battlefield, unless you already have like a battlefield to play it on. So, yeah, it becomes like it's kind of in a weird spot sometimes where you don't want to top deck this if you're really far behind because then it's just not going to help you at all. And for 5 energy and power, you're definitely going to want something that would. So because of that, I think the card's good, but also it's definitely a little bit more niche than where you'd want to include it.
Yeah, I think this is purely, as for now, I think this is purely like an Ari card. Maybe Yasuo as well, but Ari for sure. Yeah, I mean, I really like this card, so I can't give it less than a 7. So I'm just gonna give it a 7, even though it's probably supposed to be a bit lower than that.
Yeah, I'll give it a 6 then.
Okay, okay. All right. Let's move on to Caitlyn, Patrolling. 3 energy, 1 power, 3 might. I must be assigned combat damage last. And then exhaust me, deal damage equal to my might to unit at a battlefield. Use this ability only while I'm at a battlefield.
This is a weird card. I like the design of this card. I mean, I think she is kind of expensive. She has like reverse tank, so she can always kind of like be picked off last, and being able to just deal damage to enemy units on the other battlefield is nice. It's like nice for like free removal, but it does require a lot of setup. And because of that, I don't think she's very good right now. There could be some interesting like combos where you do some crazy buff and then you tap her and then just obliterate something on the other battlefield. But yeah, there's just like the game isn't there right now. Like the support for her isn't exactly there. I think there's just better things to do with your turn. But I do like the idea of the card, and I do think that like in the future there might be some interesting combos to play around with. But yeah, right now she's just not great.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problem I have with this card is that it can only it requires so much setup for an ability that is also very limited. Because if you don't have anything else, you have to play this out, and then you have to attack, and then you have to hold, and then you can use the ability, and then you're only dealing 3 damage, unless you have like some buffs, which you might have. It is calm after all. I think this card is really good in Yasuo, or especially good in Yasuo, because then you can play it out and then just move it with the Yasuo ability on the next turn to kind of get the pinging. But I think for that much setup, I think they should also be able to shoot the base, because I mean Caitlyn is a sniper, so that would be like really flavorful as well, that she can just kind of ping stuff from the battlefield. If it was from the base, it would be a bit too good. But the fact that she requires so much setup, I think this definitely should have dealt damage to the base as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like at some point in playtesting that's where she was and then it was changed. Because it seems like it does feel weird to only attack battlefield to battlefield.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a, I mean, as like you, I like this card, but I think it is just a bit, I think it's a bit too balanced. I think it's like overbalanced. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 5.
I'm probably gonna give this a 4.
Alright. Last Stand. 3 energy, 1 power, action, double a friendly unit's might this turn, give it temporary.
I feel like this card is, might have some hidden potential. Being able to double a might is actually a pretty crazy effect, and obviously you're giving it temporary, so you are killing the unit. But I do feel like there are probably ways to like kind of lessen the impact of that, whether that is returning it to your hands, whether that is playing it on a death knell creature or unit, rather, so you're able to just have it die but get some kind of benefit from it. I think that 3 and a power is still pretty costly, but for what it does, being able to double a unit, I'd imagine that there's something there in terms of combos. Again, it also, you'll get more value out of this the higher the might is. Being able to just double your 5 might to a 10 can just kind of wipe out a battlefield itself. So essentially, you are spending 2 cards, the card that is going to die for the temporary, and this card, and so you want to try to at least like make it a 2 for 2, in terms of card value, to like kind of even out there. But yeah, I think that this is like a pretty unique kind of combat trick that I think that people maybe haven't really played around with as much.
Yeah, I agree. This is it's like you said, it's very unique, and I think it's kind of a weird spell because it's not obvious how it's supposed to be played. And I think for now we don't really have. I think this card could be good in so many ways if we have like stuff that, like if you have like good death knells you want, or if you have something that scales off of might, for example, that could be very interesting. So I think this is definitely a card that you have to watch out for the future. But I think for now, just the fact that it only doubles on your own turn, so if you use this on your own turn, the might is going to shrink again on your opponent's turn, so then they can kind of do something there. And then if you do it like on your opponent's turn, then it's just going to die before holding, so you kind of lose the unit as well, which might not always be good because you want to buff as big of a unit as possible, and usually that's the unit you want the least to die. But I mean, I think this card could be very good in so many ways, but I think for right now it's not really worth it, even though it says worth it on the card.
Yeah. Right now my rating is 5, but I definitely can see this going up in the future. I'm just thinking about like a combo. Maybe you can do something with Echo where you double at the 10 on your enemy's turn, during your turn. The timing, like float all your mana and then have it die to temporary, and then now you have double the mana on your turn, like things like that.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, I like the thought process there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 5 as well. Alright, moving on to Mageseeker Warden. 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might. While I'm at a battlefield, opponents can only play units to their base, and while I'm at a battlefield, spells and abilities can't ready enemy units and gear. I mean, talking about cards that it's kind of difficult to see where they're supposed to be played. This card is so weird. It has a lot of text, but then it's also a lot of text that doesn't really do a lot in a lot of scenarios. I think this is also one because it's kind of like a silver bullet deck. A card, I mean, it's like a silver bullet card. It kind of hits very specific scenarios, especially the second effect. But I could definitely see a scenario where this is good. For now, this is very expensive because it is a 6 energy, 1 power, 5 might, which is not a good rate at all. And the ability is nowhere near good enough to be played now, I think. But I could see a future where this gets some weird support where this is actually played. But for now, yeah, I don't think this you don't really want to play this.
Yep, I totally agree. It's incredibly expensive for its might value. The only playing units to base is like a good effect. However, it's like generally by the time you're playing this, it's like, I feel like like slowing down your opponent's tempo there like doesn't really matter as much because they can just accelerate anyway, and or like remove it and then just play at a battlefield. Like playing the general play pattern isn't like play stack battlefields, it's like play things in your base anyway. So yeah. It's not super useful, and the second effect is like not particularly useful either right now. It's like there's very little spells that will allow you to ready abilities. Like there's like First Mate and some others, but it's like running this card to stop First Mate is like just not worth it at all. So yeah, I don't see this card useful at all right now. And then in the future, maybe, but even then, I'm sure there'll be other things that are printed that are better than this.
Yeah, like this, for now, this kind of only hurts Misfortune, because she can play like the First Mate and the ability, and then she also has like Deadbloom Predator, which now has to be played to the base instead. But yeah, I think this is just way too niche to be played in anything. So I think I'm just gonna give this. I'm gonna give this a 2.
Oh, yeah, I'll give it a 3. I was thinking like maybe there's a niche scenario where you tech it against a MF Aurora, where it's like you play this and now they can't dead bloom you off of Aurora.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
And
I
then
don't
you
know.
have to retreat it anyway for the
Yeah.
next turn because it's
Yeah.
in the base.
Yeah,
Get one turn out there.
I think tech cards that cost 6 energy and 1 might has to be a bit better
pretty
than
bad.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Party favors. 3 energy for a spell that says each other player chooses cards or runes. For each player that chooses cards, you and that player each draw 1. And then for each player that chooses runes, you and that player each channel 1 rune exhausted.
Yeah, this is purely a multiplayer card. I think it can actually be pretty good in multiplayer because you're getting, like you can get up to 3 cards or up to 4 if you choose cards yourself, and runes, just cards and runes for everyone. And you get the you get more benefit for yourself than any other individual person gets, right? Which is pretty good. Yeah, I've never played around with it because I haven't played any big multiplayer games like that, but I think that it could be fun. Yeah, you could draw a map.
Yeah, I mean, coming from Magic, coming from Magic, you have a bunch of cards that does this. You kind of give your opponents something, and then you get all the benefits yourself. So kind of like a group hug effect is kind of the term for it. So yeah, I think in multiplayer this card is amazing because I mean any combination of those two is going to be good for you. And the fact that and the real power I think is that your opponents don't have the choice to choose and none of them. They have to choose one. So you're gonna get 2 cards or a rune, or you're gonna get 1 rune and like 2 runes and 1 card, or 3 runes with 3 cards. So I mean any combination is really good for you, and it only costs you 3, so you can play this on turn 1. So yeah, I think this card is amazing. But as you said, it is strictly for multiplayer. You'd never want to play this in single player, unfortunately.
Yep. So under the guise of multiplayer, I think this is probably a 7.
Yeah, I think so too. Solid card in a multiplayer. Alright, Solari Shrine. 3 energy for a gear that says when you kill a stunned enemy unit, you may exhaust this to draw 1. I think this card is... I really like the stun archetype, and I think having a payoff for stunning enemies like this is really good. Or for killing stunned enemy units like this is really good. I think it is a bit too unreliable now. I don't really think there are enough ways to kind of kill enemy units outside of combat, and in combat there are a lot of other factors to play in as well. So I think this is like a one-off in the stun deck if you want to play it, and then if you get it off, it's amazing because you just get a free draw. But yeah, outside of that, it's a bit too specific to be running anything else. And yeah, so I think this is strictly a one-off because yeah, drawing 2 it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I agree. I think you need in the future where there's more stun support, I can see this being good. Right now, I just don't think it's very good because you're spending 3, and to even just replace itself, you need to stun an enemy unit and then kill it. So generally, if you're stunning an enemy unit, you're using either using a resource, which makes killing it using another resource, just like sinking 2 resources just to draw 1. Like you don't really go positive on that. You just kind of go even just to kill 1 thing. And then also, if you are stunning something incidentally through attacking, like that's nice. But then your opponent is generally going to be playing around scenarios where that is going to happen, right? If I know my opponent's playing Leona, I'm not going to leave, or I'm going to try to avoid scenarios where I'm leaving something on the battlefield where they can stun it and kill it anyway, right? So it makes it like harder to use this, and it's also it's like one of those cards. It's like you can use it once per turn, which is good. There aren't really and it's also weird because like if you were killing a unit that's stunned, you're generally going to want to do it through combat because it just means that you're not really sinking anymore, or you have the potential to not sink additional resources into it. It's just kind of like a weird spot right now. If there's more stun support where the stuns are more incidental as opposed to like the primary purpose of the card, I can see this being a lot better because you're still getting something else in addition to the stun. But right now it's just okay.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 5.
I'll probably give it a 4 or 5. Yeah.
Alright, Sona Harmonious. 4 energy, 1 power, 4 might. While I'm at a battlefield, ready 4 friendly runes at the end of your turn.
So we saw a lot of Sona in the earlier days of like during reveal season, and I think Sona is actually a pretty decent card. She's like in terms of stats, she's below rate, but her effect is really useful, like a really strong effect. Just being able to just always have runes up on your enemy's turn, which is also generally what Com wants to do anyway, because they have a lot of combat tricks and buffs. So that's very useful. It does mean that she needs to sit on a battlefield, and that becomes harder when there are cards like Charm, um, plenty of burn. She's only a 4 might unit, so it's pretty easy, like a pretty easy breakpoint for those kind of burn effects. And but you do have buffs in your deck that it's not really an additional deck building cost because you kind of want to be running them anyway. So I do think Sona is a pretty good card. Though you don't see her as much because she doesn't necessarily fit. Like she's not needed in the decks that are the com decks that are particularly strong right now, because there's just other good options.
Yeah, I think for now I like this in Ari, because then you usually always have like the Ari on the battlefield first, and then you can play this on the next turn. And this did also get an errata, because now it says while I'm at a battlefield, ready for like up to 4 friendly runes at the end of your turn. Because the way this is worded, how it like technically worked before is that you had to have 4 friendly runes, you couldn't just ready 3. But now it readies anything, which is, I mean, that is how the card is supposed to work, I think. So the ability is incredible. It's like a double any ability, which is strong. But the fact that it is only a 4-might unit, so it's very squishy. But you're also playing it in Calm, which has, like, as we talked about before, all the protection spells and the hourglasses and the disciplines and everything. So this kind of has the whole suite built around it already. But it does require some setup, because you don't really want to have this as your only unit at a battlefield, because it just dies too easily. But with some setup, and if this is combined with the Ari champion, then this card is actually very good. But yeah, it did see a lot of play in the beginning, and then now nobody really plays it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this a 6.
Yeah, I think a 6 is good for this as well. Okay, Taric Protector. 4 energy, 1 power, 4 might, shield, tank, and other friendly units here have shield. This is also a card that I've never really played around with. So I don't really know how this card feels to be played. But it is kind of like a reverse Captain Farron. Farron gives everything assault, and this gives everything shield. So I think this effect is pretty good. It also has tank, so it dies first, which, I mean, it could be nice, but also at the same time you kind of lose the effect as well. So the giving everything else shield becomes a bit less relevant. So this feels kind of like you play it out and then it defends for 1 turn and then it dies. So I think the tank on this just kind of makes it. It puts it in a weird spot. You feel like it's only good for defending a battlefield once, and then after that this just dies, and then you kind of lose the effect after that.
Yeah, I feel like this card's. I haven't really played around with it, and I mean, like, it has good keywords, and but 4 and a power is not amazing. Also, it generally fills a spot in your deck that like is kind of. I don't know. It's filled by other units. Like if you're playing this in Leona, like I'm probably much rather play Leona for the same or similar cost than Taric. It could be interesting, and maybe I could go wide kind of strategy where you get more uses out of the shield. But again, I think like the meta right now is like the decks that want to hold are the ones that are either want to hold alone in Yi or want to hold with like big units in like the Aurora decks, and I don't really see Taric being in either of those types of decks. So I don't know if he's particularly great right now. I do like the card. I think it's pretty cool, and I could see it in the future being kind of relevant. But right now, I think it's only an okay card.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think the tank is really what does it for me. It's a weird combination with the effects and the tank as well. So yeah, I think I can only. I mean, it is a unique effect, so I think I'm gonna give this I think I'm gonna give it a low 5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 5 as well.
Yeah. All right, Tasty Feyfolk. 7 energy, 6 might, accelerate, and then death knell, channel 2 runes exhausted, and draw 1.
everyone's favorite eggplant.
Yeah.
The eggplant. I was pretty high on this card when I first saw it, and I think it's pretty decent. It's like it's seen play now in a lot of the ramp com decks. It's 7 for 6, which is below rate, but it doesn't cost any power for something that is decently large, which is pretty good. It has accelerate, which is kind of very useful in com because there aren't that many accelerate units in com, and its death knell effect is just amazing. You get to channel 2 runes, and you get to draw 1, so it gets to replace itself. So it is just like a good mid to top end card that lets you can come in accelerated, and when it dies, it pays for itself. So I think it's a pretty good card.
I didn't really pay attention to this card until it kind of got featured and people started playing like the eggplant Yihis and everything. Yeah, this card it kind of does everything you want for this kind of card. You have the option to play it out for free, I mean without recycling anything if you want to. And then even if you do play the accelerate, I mean if it dies you just get the rune you paid back, and then you also get another one. And then if you didn't pay it, then you get 2 runes back, and it also recycles itself, which is so good. And it has it is a bit expensive for 7 energy and 8 energy if you want to play it out accelerated. But 6 might is still a 6 might. It's good stats and it attacks into a lot of stuff. So yeah, I think this card is really good, and the fact that it replaces itself and at least ramps you 1 is just, yeah, I think this card is very, very good.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this a 7 or 8.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a high 7 as well, I think. Alright, Yasuo Remorseful. 6 energy, 2 power, 6 might. When I attack, deal damage equal to my might to an enemy unit here. I mean, this effect is incredible. This is such a good effect. The main downside of this is the double power cost, which is pretty expensive. You kind of have to set yourself back a turn to play this, and for that reason, you don't really want to play it outside of Yasuo, the legend, I think, because then you could also play this out, and if you're on 8 runes, you could also just use the ability to attack with it right away. But the fact that this gets to remove a total of 11 might without dying himself, I think is very, very good. Because then you can remove a 6 might unit with the ability, and then you can just swing over a 5 might unit with the guy himself. Yeah, I think this card is incredible, but it also is a very big investment, and you kind of feel in the Yasuo decks, when this dies, your game plan just kind of, the deck gets a lot weaker, if your deck is kind of centered around like this card. But I think the effect is incredible, and it also says my might, so if you buff this, then it just gets even better. So yeah, I think this card is very, very good.
Yeah, I love this card. It is very expensive. It is actually pretty slow because it does require 8 energy to kind of like haste it in with Yasuo's legend ability. But man, the effect is just so clean. I love being it's just so strong. Like you said, you're able to like essentially immediately nuke something. And generally in the decks that you are playing this, you have combat tricks to keep it alive, you have Sonia's hourglasses, you have additional movement spells. You have many options to kind of like make full use of this, but it is very expensive and kind of slow. So that is the trade-off for such a strong effect. I think that it does fall into like a weird spot where like stronger units like your Dead Boom Predators and things that you drop off of Aurora are still like stronger than this in terms of like you'll be able to trade with it, the unit, but you're only trading up a few energy or power, so it's like it's like not an amazing answer, so it feels like almost more mid-rangey, top end of mid-range than like a late game kind of thing, but the effect is incredibly strong.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think just because it is a bit expensive, and when you lose it, you kind of have invested a lot for it to just disappear. But I think I am going to give this a high 7 still.
Yep, I'm also going to give it a 7. That sounds right to me.
All right. Zania's Hourglass. Here she comes. 2 energy for a gear that has hidden, and then the next time a friendly unit would die, kill this instead, and then recall that unit exhausted.
Probably the best gear in the game, besides like Aurora. I think this is just an incredibly strong effect. It's only 2, so you can just play it out in your base and then just kind of wait for it to trigger. That does have the downside of losing. Your opponent can intentionally trigger it because it is the first unit that dies. But being able to hide this at a battlefield and just kind of triggering it when you need it, and it does have because it is a gear and it goes back to the base when it resolves. It actually allows you to save things on other battlefields that aren't necessarily in the same battlefield. Because normally, hitting cards have a restriction that lets where they have to target the thing that's in the same battlefield. But yeah, this just allows you to save your big units, and you can go plus on resources pretty easily in terms of energy and power. Just having your opponent having to kill your big unit twice is just it's so strong. And it definitely lets you play more aggressively with your more important units when you know that you have a way to save them.
Yeah, I mean, this card is incredible, and I agree with everything you said. And I think this also, you think it's such an easy card to just play out, and then it can just protect whatever you want. But it does require some thinking, because you don't really want to hide this on a battlefield with a less important unit on it, because then they can just attack into that, and then you have to use this, and then you have to save it. So you really want to hide this when you have a unit that you really want to protect on that specific battlefield, and then in case you want to save something else, you can still use it. So yeah, I think this card is incredible, but I also like the fact that it doesn't. You can't just play it out and get the ultimate payoff for it right away. You actually have to put some thought into it, which I think it just makes it better even.
Yeah, I think this is probably any 8, high 8, 9.
Yeah. I think I can give this a 9. Yeah, I'm comfortable with giving this a 9. I think. All right, Lee Sin Ascetic, 5 energy, 1 power, 5 might, shield, and exhaust to buff me, and I can have any number of buffs. Yeah, this card is very interesting. It is kind of like a self-sustaining machinery. It just keeps churning along. When playing Lee Sin, it can be weird to kind of find spots where you want to play this, because in the early game, this is a bit too slow. A lot of times you have other stuff you want to play first, but then if you play late game, you don't really get that much payoff for the effect, because you kind of want this to be out early, so then you can keep buffing him. But if you can get this effect off, I mean, this is just going to be able to trade into anything, and it does have shield as well, which is kind of redundant on this, because if this is like a 13 might unit, the extra plus on the defense is not really going to do much. But it is nice if you're forced to hold with this, then it can get a +1 as well, which is nice. And yeah, I mean, the fact that it doubles off of the what is it called? Last Stand? No, was it Last Stand? Yeah. The fact that all the buffs gets doubled by that is also a very interesting thing that I hadn't really thought of even. So yeah, I think this effect is really good, but I think it's a bit difficult sometimes to find out where you can actually play this out.
Yep, I totally agree. I think that you probably wouldn't want to play this in any deck but the Lee Sin deck, and even then, it is slow. So you have to weigh, and I think that you have to weigh when to play it, as opposed to just fighting for the board. But also, it's to ramp it up to its require the power level that you want from this. It does take a few turns, but the thing is, when you get there, there's not much in the game besides straight kill effects in yellow that will be able to take care of it, because especially you can protect it with the Last Stand, and you're just constantly able to. You can buff it with itself. You can buff it with the hero, the legend ability, so that's +2 every turn. Then you can also have it sitting on a battlefield. Maybe that's giving buffs. You have plenty of buff generating cards in your deck, so you're able to get this up. If you're able to get this up without any kind of hindrance, it can single-handedly win you the game. But the thing is that there's a strong period of weakness when you first play it, and it's maybe just a 5 or maybe a 6, and it still can die to some removal. So yeah, because of that, it's balanced by the fact that it is this awkward time. So I think that the card is good, but I think it's good in only specific circumstances. For that reason, I think that I'm going to give it a 6, slightly above average.
Yeah, I think a 6 is. I think it's a 5 or 6 for me, but I think yeah, 6 is good because it is good in Lee Sin if you get it out. But yeah, you don't really want to play this in anything else. Alright, Leona Zealot, 6 energy, 1 power, 6 might. If an opponent's score is within 3 points of the victory score, I enter ready. And then stunned enemy units here have -8 might to a minimum of 1 might.
All right. I think this card is okay. 6 and a power for 6 is not amazing. You only really get its ability towards like the end of the game, which is probably fine because that's when you'll have the resources to play it anyway. Its effect of stunning enemy units, when stunning enemy units have -8, which is actually lets you use the stuns more aggressively, which is I think pretty cool, and also it's great on defense as well. I'm just only okay on this card because it's like, again, it still requires you to utilize like stun support, and stun support is not great right now. Having it come in ready is nice. It's like a nice thing, but again, it's not. I don't think this like pushes the card into territories where it's like amazing. I think having it as your chosen champion in Leona can be beneficial because like then you're not clogging up your top decks with it, and also you can just kind of play it when you're going to be able to utilize the effect, which I think increases the power level a little bit. But I'm only okay on this card. I think this is like maybe an average card, slightly above average currently with the current stun support.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think this is like playing it in the Leona Champion Zone is kind of where you want to be with this, because you want to make sure you don't draw it too early. Because you don't really want to play this out unless you can get it enter ready, because then it is a bit slow paying a power for just a 6 might unit. But then the kind of downside of that is that then you don't get to play the yellow Leona in the Champion Zone, which is your go-to early drop. I think this sits in a weird spot. It is like the stunned enemies having -8 is of course incredible, because that just makes like anything beatable by this. But that also requires you to have some way of stunning a card, in which case you need to either be on like minimum 8 energy when you play this, or you have to have a Leona out. So it does require a bit of payoff. Oh no, a bit of setup, I mean. But if you can get it off, this effect is of course incredible, but I think it is... I decided on playing the Eclipse Herald over this in my Leona deck, just because the Eclipse Herald was a bit bigger when it came out, and it also synergized more with the stuns, I felt like, and it was a bit more aggressive, and it could also be played... because I think anything that relies on your opponent doing well in the game is not going to be that good. And it has to be within 3 points, so you kind of have to... You don't really want to like go too quickly, I guess, because then you're not going to get this effect off. So I think it sits in a weird spot. The effect is incredible, but it also requires a bit of like weird setup around it. So I don't know. I haven't played a lot with it, so I don't really know how it feels like to play, but yeah, it feels a bit weird for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this a 5. I think, it's playable, but I also don't think it's particularly amazing right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 5 as well. Alright, Mystic Reversal. 4 energy, 3 power. Reaction, gain control of a spell. You may make new choices for it. I think this card is very interesting. It's a really cool effect. But it does require the meta to kind of have enough spells you want to take control over, because paying 3 power is a lot. Paying 4 energy is very little. You can do that any day of the week, but the fact that you have to pay 3 power for it means that you don't really want to play it. You don't really want to play it unless it's a really impactful spell. And like, you kind of have to have 4 energy up on your opponent's turn, so this kind of is a really good card to play in combination with like the Sonar, for example, because then you always have the 4 energy up. But your opponent does have to play a specific kind of game to make this card be worth it. But if you get this off, then I mean, just Mystic Reversaling a Time Warp is just incredible. But I mean, then you rely on your opponent having the Time Warp, and yeah, I mean, it does require some setup, because you kind of have to have 4 runes ready at the end of your turn, and then unless you play Sona, that is pretty expensive for something that might come on your opponent's turn, and unless you have something else on your turn to kind of use that energy on, then this does require... it's a bit risky, I think, to play this.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a hilarious card. I think that if we find ourselves in a meta where time warp is, I mean, it already started to, like, time warp is like pretty big, and all these like unchecked power, all these like divine judgment, all these like massive effects. Divine judgment actually would not be good because that's already an effect that target hits both players. But like these massive like game ending kind of like cards, I think it's like this could actually be a decent side deck choice. Like imagine, all right, like they're playing time warp, they're going onto the turn to play it, and it's like the turn they're going to play it, and then you just drop this, and then it's like, oh, actually I win instead. Like that's like a pretty compelling thing as like a tech choice. I think that the more big game ending spells that you can co-op, I think the better. Like being able to like, oh, they're turn 7, like they're gonna Acathian Rain, so now you like kind of you hedge a little bit and leave up them the energy to kind of counter that. Like you said, it is very expensive, so it's like I feel like it's only really useful in the scenarios where like a really big spell is going to come because they're going to play it on a particular turn, and that's when it is. So I think that it lends itself to being a sideboard card more so than a main board card. But yeah, again, it's like it is also very expensive, so you have to like keep that in mind.
Yeah, but I think also I will say this card I think is really cool to play multiplayer.
Yes.
So I think it's gonna see a lot more play than in single player. But yeah, I mean, going off of single player, I think I'm gonna give this for now. I think I'm gonna give this a 5 for now.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 6 only because I like how insane this effect could be. It's probably more of a 5, but I think like I can see this actually being a legitimate deck choice. I'm sorry, tech choice against time warp decks like time warp Kaisa and time warp Ari.
Yeah. All right. Seal of Focus. 0 energy, 1 power, and then exhaust reaction, add 1 power. I mean, the seals are all the same. I think this is also one of the better ones, together with the red one, the Seal of Rage. But I mean, yeah, seals only go as far as they can, and I think I'm still just gonna give this. I don't know what I gave the last one, but I think this is also like, I mean, the green seal I think is better than a lot of the others. So I think I'm gonna give this a 6.
Yeah, 6 sounds good. Like, it's slightly above average in the decks that you want to use it, so that's right.
Yeah. All right, White Flame Protector. 8 energy, 2 power, 8 might. When you play me, give a unit plus 8 might this turn.
This is a good card, I think. It is the card that a lot of these ramp decks are ramping into, or an Aurora is trying to drop. It's 8 for 8 with 2 power costs, but the on play is really strong. It lets you essentially just turn any of your smaller units or your other big units into even bigger units. Lets you pretty much just take a battlefield if you have something ready to use it on. The effect is actually kind of wasted in Aurora, but in Aurora decks, you generally, if you will have to go ramp and mana to cast it, which is like, and it's also an 8 might body, which is just very strong. Yeah, I think this is a pretty strong card. It's like actually not like super amazing, because it does require a little bit of like setup of at least just having something in your base or battlefield that can gank. But when you do, it's just pretty game changing. So I think this is a pretty good card.
Yeah, I think this is like a Sprite Mother on steroids, because you kind of play out the body and then something else gets to swing. And the fact that this just buffs up like your Poros by 8 and makes it a 10 might unit is just incredible. I think this card is insane. I don't really like playing it in the Aurora decks, because then, as you said, the effect is wasted, and then it's just an 8 cost vanilla in that case. But outside of the Aurora decks, I think this card is just it's kind of the green Thousand Tail Watcher, kind of like a flip the board or flip the tables, I guess, kind of card that just makes you get back into the game. But I mean, it does require you to have something else on the board. It doesn't just do the same thing like the Watcher by itself. But if you have anything, if that's even a 1 might unit, this card is so impactful. And I think I don't think I can give this any less than an 8.
Yeah, I agree. I think this card is very good. I'm probably going to give it an 8 as well. It also is a dragon, which is semi-relevant right now, but could be very relevant in the future. And also, the artwork is awesome. So
Yes, it is. Yes, it
I
is.
give it an 8.
Yeah. All right, moving into the final two cards. This is the Proving Grounds cards. So we're first looking at Master Yi Meditative. Wow. 5 energy, 1 power, 4 might. While you have 8 plus runes, I have plus 4 might. I think this card is better than a lot of people give it credit for. 5 energy and 1 power for 8 might units is really good. But of course it is a bit weird because you don't want to play it out on curve usually. But in like the ramp decks, this does become very good. And the fact that some of the ramp spells are actions means that you can kind of trick this card out as well, or kind of bait your opponent into attacking into it, because you can have this as a 4 might unit on 7 runes, and then you can play the what is it called? Yes, Finder Center in a showdown, and then this all of a sudden becomes an 8 might unit, which is a pretty sick play. So yeah, I think this card is actually really good, but it does hit in a weird spot where you kind of don't want to play it out on curve. And when you play it out, it might also be too late, because it doesn't do anything when it's played out unless you play it with some, for example, like the Sun Disc, for example, when that color combination becomes relevant. So yeah, I think this card is good, but it is, for now, it is a bit too slow.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. It's okay. I think it's, can be slightly above average. If you're playing this green orange E, you can, if you're playing deckhand, I mean, not many decks play deckhand, but you can ready it for 7, and if you're at 7, you're probably above, at 8 if you haven't spent any power, or if you went second. So yeah, it's like swinging for 8 with ace is like good, but it's also like takes a lot of setup. So I think it's just okay because of that, all the things that you had said.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, it is to be said that even if you're on 8 runes, this does recycle a power, so you're not even going to be on 8 runes that turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of have to be on a lot of runes to make this, at least if you want this to be an 8 when you play it out. But yeah, I think that's a cool card. But for now, I don't think we have enough stuff to kind of make this be good enough. So I think I'm going to give this a rating of, for now, I'm going to give this a 5.
Yep, I'm also going to give it a 5.
All right. Moving on to the final card, and we are ending off with a banger. The Zephyr Sage. 6 energy, 1 power, 6 might, shield. Just a house of a card. This is your auto-include on every green deck. It just does so much for you. But yeah, this card is, I mean, it is from Proving Grounds, so it's supposed to be a bit powered down, which it is. 6 energy and 1 power for a 7 might unit on defense is, I mean, the 7 mights for 6 energy and a power is above rate in some sense, but the fact that it's so expensive, if this was, yeah, I don't know what I feel about this card. It's not that good. It's way too expensive for what it does. It's way too slow. Maybe if there is some bird synergy and this gets a discount, maybe it becomes a bit better. But for now, yeah, this is just, it is strictly a Proving Grounds card.
Yep, exactly. Feel exactly the same. It's just like, for that much energy and power, you want your unit to have a lot more impact to the board, and this just is not that. It doesn't. It's just, you play it and it just sits in your base, or or maybe a battlefield. It doesn't really do anything. They have to attack into it, but then by that point in the game, there's plenty of ways to kind of get over a 6 might unit, or 7 in this case because of the shield, and then birds, they're not doing much right now. So maybe in the future, crazy bird synergies, but it's definitely not the play right now. So I'm probably going to give this a 4, or 3 or 4.
A 4? Oh wow, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I'll give it a 3. Yeah, I'll give it a 3. You're right.
Okay,
I was trying to be generous.
Okay, well, I mean, I appreciate that, but I think at least for now, I think I'm just gonna give this a 2. Because
yeah,
I mean,
but also it's not smart, right?
Yeah, you do never want to play this, and unless there is some burst synergy that makes this good, then yeah, it is just, I mean, it does what it's supposed to. It is in the Proving Ground set, and it's a sick card to play out. It's cool art, it's fun, it's probably balanced within the kind of Proving Grounds play rules. And of course, it does get better in Master Yi, which it is printed in. In that case, it becomes a 6 energy 9 might unit, which is of course incredible. But yeah, outside of that, it's not very good. Alright, and with that, boom, we're done with the Proving Grounds cards and the Origins cards, everything that is calm at least. And again, I mean, let me know if you like these kinds of videos. Now I've done Fury and Calm, and I plan on doing this for every set going forward. But yeah, let me know if there's something we can do differently. If you like these kinds of videos, like it's all rambling and there's not any gameplay. It's just like talking about our impressions and thoughts on things. But yeah, if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It always helps to get more of those. And yeah, do you have any final words, Mr. Oh, what is it? I forgot your name.
Vigorino. So Vix. You can just call me Vix.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Vix. Yeah.
Just thanks for watching.
Yeah. All right. And until then, take care and bye bye.